Saturday evening, July 9th, and 2022. I've had a very long day, so apologies if the stomach talk is a bit tangential. I'll likely keep it fairly short. I spent the day with Tanrakito and Anagarika Justin and one of our kind supporters, Jeannie Daskis. And it was quite a lovely day, even though it was very long. Purchasing some trees for the monastery. Jeannie offered a couple of trees, and Mike Joliffe, who's another supporter, offered to get one in honor of his father, a tree that his father particularly liked. So it was quite there's a lot of good feelings, a lot of mudita, enjoying the goodness of the offerings, the goodness of those who receive benefit from their offerings and the joy they feel. After the day was almost over, we were in the cab of this truck, and all of a sudden I looked over, or I heard Tanrakito giggling a little bit, and Justin too, and I wasn't paying it, I was just looking in front of me, so there was some sort of commotion to the right, and we saw this car and these very enthusiastic young people, and they were listening to some music that was very loud, and it was, very deep bass and some sort of rap, and they had these huge smiles on their faces, and they wanted us to roll the window down. And so Tanrakito started to do that, and then everyone in the car, all the youngsters in the car, were smiling at us and rapping to this music, praise the Lord, praise the Lord. And we kind of just laughed with them, and we didn't really know what that was about, to be honest. But it's interesting when, when you're in the company of others and you're with people who are non-threatening, there's not really a negative feeling there. So it just felt the natural response was to feel quite as happy as the others who were in the other car. Didn't really need to question their motives, or I think Tanrakito was astonished that there was sort of this kind of religious rap music. He wasn't aware of that. And but that's what comes out of this, the sense of just being able to enjoy other people's happiness. And it's a very important thing to remind ourselves of. And the opposite feeling of that is jealousy, or we can feel spite for others for their good fortune. So it's quite helpful to kind of reflect on that sometimes whenever we have a sense of jealousy or wanting something to be our way, somebody else gets some other way that we want we wanted for ourselves and it doesn't work out. Then we can look at our self-position in that moment, a sense of why not me, and why this other person. And the interesting thing that arises out of that is often this, a question you can ask yourself, well, what feels better, rejoicing in the goodness that another person receives, or dwelling in our own aversion, our own negativity for us not getting what we wanted. And surely the answer, is quite evident when we move our minds towards that positive sense. It's incredibly helpful to us, and it really erases that sense of jealousy or a feeling of why didn't I get what I deserve, or there's no justice in this world. And similarly, that's how we want to move with sadness as well. It's not only goodness, but we also want to understand what sympathy is. To know that, sort of have a sense of like, oh, if I was in another person's position, how would I feel in terms of a sadness or pain? Because we can be very locked into our own experience and forget that others also experience pain and loss. I was reflecting on this just while we were talking, or while all of you were sitting. I needed a bit of a break, but I wanted to call my mom and just wish her well. She's going through a bit of a tough time with this recent July 4th shooting that occurred in essentially our hometown around where I grew up. One of the women who died was a member of the synagogue that I was part of and my mom's a part of, and I didn't realize until today that she actually knew this person, and this person's also, as I've mentioned before, is one of our supporters' aunts, so just hits home. And she talked to me about another friend of hers whose daughter had committed suicide a few years ago, and just now learned that one of her other daughters has a type of cancer, and so there's unknowns with that. But when I heard that, I could identify in myself that I wasn't in quite the state to receive that in terms of, oh yeah, that's a very painful thing. Sometimes the mind can be shut down to those experiences. It's not accessible to understand another person's pain. And I think that we can either blame ourselves, oh, why am I so insensitive? That's pretty terrible information. But we can also try to learn, well, what's really going on here? Why is that blocked? Why is there a sense of my own compassion that's not present in this moment? And it does return, for me at least, to that sense of responding to me and my world. It's sort of like, this isn't me. It probably also comes from a sense of hearing about grave illness and death is a reminder, oh, right, I don't want to kind of deal with that right now, thinking about other people dying, about my own death or illness. These are difficult to bring up for ourselves and to really face. But it's one of the more important things that we can do, because it stops us from being in our sort of own self-centered world, but it also stops us from our ignoring anicca, or ignoring the fact that everything's essentially changing, not in our control. And so much of our lives we deal with believing and wanting to create control, to stop change from occurring. So something like a shooting that seems very unjust, where 7 people die, 25 people are injured, and some of them severely injured. One of them, a young boy who's a twin, became paraplegic. And so we can think, oh, well, it's not my neighborhood. And it can feel very distant until one day it's not. And many of us have faced these kind of difficulties in our lives. We have lost people we've loved. And the question, I would say, from a Dhamma perspective, is to ask, well, what was learned from that? Was it that it's unfair, it's not right? It shouldn't have happened. Or perhaps there's a sense of sometimes just ignoring it, not really thinking about it much, not reminding ourselves of loss. One of the main tenets of the Buddha's teachings, he said, all that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. That's a pretty radical teaching. And luckily he doesn't leave it at that and say, well, just, sorry, this is the bad news. So, well, there's good news too, because when you gain this insight, you actually take this in and you realize for yourself the truth of this statement. Then you don't ask yourself, why? Why does that happen? It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't be like this. And you can have compassion for yourself and others. You say, oh yeah, this is happening to me. I also love myself. I love my life. But I will be separated from it. And all of those who I hold dear. And oftentimes we're in a bit of a conundrum with this, where it's not just a bit, because we do have those whom we love. We have, many of us, partners, children, grandchildren, mothers, fathers, grandparents. I mean, probably everybody in this room has at least one of those relationships. So the key is, I think, learning how do we incorporate this knowledge without it being depressing, or ultimately just being depressing. Not that it can't be sad or something that brings us down, but that it doesn't only have to be that. And I think a lot of it is a reflection on attachment, how we attach to those things in our lives and the people in our lives, the beings in our lives, but also all of the things that we hold dear as not only permanent, but we cling. To all of these things and people and beings. We do this in a way that keeps us in a sense of, continual dukkha or suffering, or a sense that it brings difficulty, sadness, remorse, fear. And so, with the insight of the truth of this, that we do ultimately lose everyone, everything we love, and our own lives, then we can, in terms of recognizing that, in terms of seeing that clearly, even through the sadness of it, we can let go. We don't have to cling so tightly. And it's tricky, right? Because the Buddha, he didn't say, all human beings who encounter my teachings should get divorced, make sure you don't have children, be alone, don't be around other people, don't rely on other people. He didn't see it that way. That wasn't his teaching. So it was how do you relate to others? How do you relate to your experience with the acknowledgement of anicca, the acknowledgement of change and separation, without the clinging to it? We've recently had this young cat in the monastery, and it's pretty weak, and it looks pretty sickly. And I have a pretty hard time when I see that. I see these cats come through, and so one of the community members came up to me and said, "I'm not sure what to do. This cat's not moving. It's so weak it can't move." And we have a policy with kind of essentially allowing nature to take its course. It might sound cruel, but we don't have pets here, and it's very hard to find a home for these animals. So I turned to the community member and I said, "Yeah, go ahead and feed it," because that's just seemed to be the right thing to do. And then called up some shelters, and they said, "I have to wait quite a while." But I found out that the cat also hangs out at our neighbors. So, as many of you know, I went in the car with one of our guests, Keenan. It was very nice to drive the cat over with me, and brought the cat over, and our neighbors fed the cat, and I returned to the monastery, and within a couple hours it was right back in the monastery, right back here. And I could see that what I was holding on to was a sense of not wanting this cat to be harmed and wanting it to be preserved. It's staying in this. It continues to sleep in this area that's about 2 to 3 feet from a rattlesnake. And I don't think it knows the rattlesnake is there. Probably the rattlesnake knows that it's there, but it's been 3 nights like that. And so there's this fear that this animal will be eaten, this cat will be, it's a pretty innocent cat. It doesn't seem to be a very good hunter. So that clinging comes up, worry comes up. In fact, right when I came back to the monastery here, a deer chased the cat into a culvert, and then so I went right back and checked on it. And yet there it is, there's that clinging, that worry, concern over another being. But I also noticed in that concern there was something I was wanting to get rid of. And that was that very worry itself. And so I could also see in there this sense of, well, if I just find the cat a home, if I figure out where to put it, if I get somebody to take it, then I won't have this fear and worry anymore. And I've done that 3 times in the monastery. My stepmom is the owner of one of these cats. But I don't think it's really the right way, to really understand it is to say, well, do the best I can to see if I can help this cat out, but sleeping 3 feet from a rattlesnake and being sickly and not being a good hunter, and the shelters being full and not being able to take it, there's a reflection here to know that I don't have control. It's not certain what's going to happen. And so I can actually reflect on that cat's well-being, my wishing for its well-being, but also the fact that it too shall die, it too shall be separated from me. And I can look at that clinging. Where does that clinging come from? It wasn't there 5 days ago before the cat appeared. It was there for another being or another something. And when you ask yourself in your lives, what are those things that you cling to? You can ask yourself right now, what are you clinging to? Who are you clinging to? How are you clinging to your own life? What are you afraid to let go of? It's one of the most important reflections, I think, that can be done. So for somebody, I think, who recognizes this, all that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. That doesn't mean that that person is cold, heartless, unfeeling. But their mind doesn't move into that craving and clinging for that statement to be wrong, to be different, to be otherwise. No. There is permanence. I want this person to be around forever. I want this situation, I want my life to stay the same. I don't want it to end. I don't want to age. I don't want to sicken. How can I prevent that from happening? Of course, we need to take care of our bodies. Buddha didn't deny that or deny taking medicine, but just we need to acknowledge that so that we don't suffer, we don't cling and suffer and create a lot of problems for ourselves, beat our breasts over the fact that someday we won't be alive anymore. And that's why it is helpful to reflect on the end of our life, the end of others' lives, so that it's not only depressing, but it's real. We understand it. We see our fear very clearly, and we are able to eventually uproot that fear and that very clinging. And again, it doesn't mean that we become cold or heartless. We just see clearly. There can still be sadness, but it's a sober sadness. It can be an awakened sadness. One of the ways that we can engage with this in terms of practical matters is some of the techniques that the Buddha taught around our meditation. So some of the monks will, and nuns will, engage in something called a supa practice. And this is, however, not only a domain of monastics. It's a practice for everyone. And that is, to really examine our own body, to look at our own bodies and to know that, these parts that we have, what is the skin that is covering our bodies, the nails, the teeth, what's underneath, the flesh, the blood, our organs. Mostly we just notice what's skin deep, just what appears at the surface. And we're taught to do that. Our society rewards that. Very few advertisements where the insides of somebody's body is actually shown. Unless you're trying to stop somebody from smoking, then it's okay. So just reflecting on these parts, just knowing like, oh, this is what a liver looks like, this is what my liver looks like, this is where it is in the body. It's a visual, visceral experience. We can do the same with another technique called death contemplation. So we imagine our own death, our bodies falling apart, decaying. We start with aging, get to know aging, and imagine ourselves aging or becoming ill. We can imagine our own deaths, what it will be like for us to go through the dying process, what will happen to our bodies after we die, what will happen to our bodies long after we die, the dissolution into dust. And some might hear this and say, oh, it's so morbid. Why would you ever want to think about those things? Because they're real. It's going to happen to every one of us. And for some people who are in certain places, it could be immediate. It's driving away from the monastery, car accident, going to look at that cute little cat, and a rattlesnake is not seen and bites me. Mountain lion attack, or fall off the mountain somewhere. Our bodies can be quite fragile. We could just faint and I'll fall from 4 or 5 feet. That's all it takes. Happened to one of the monks in Thailand. He fainted and fell just the distance of his body and died. 2 monks. So we think, we think sometimes that this isn't worth our while to really bring these elements up for ourselves. But if not now, then when? When we're 75 or 80, 85? I'll reflect on death later when I'm old. I'll try to think about aging once I'm aged. But we're all aging. We start aging from conception. If you reflect a little bit about COVID and just all of the things that have happened over the last 2 years, it's been kind of an interesting ride. All of the perceptions around illness and how to protect ourselves from illness. How to protect ourselves from other people who don't want to protect themselves. And locked ourselves inside. And sometimes it helped. But also, what did it do to our minds? It's good to reflect on that. How have our attitudes changed in these last 2 years? Before there was COVID. Are we more frightened, less frightened? Or just tired of it? Or perhaps we want more protections? There's no reason to judge ourselves or others around this, but just to look and see. What's our attitude around this? How does it deal with this sense of anicca? What's our attitude around illness? What's our experience of it? Are we honest with ourselves about the fact that all of us will get ill? And most of us will probably get COVID. We haven't already had it. So as I'm speaking about this, it should come across that what I'm saying is it's sort of an encouragement and an urgency, an urgent encouragement to look into some of those qualities of our lives that are difficult for us to examine. Those things that we don't want to have changed. That we don't want to change, we don't want to be different. I think most people on this planet have a relationship with their notion of death. There's some fairly strong relationship. Whatever it is, it's an individual thing. But if we're not exploring it, then we're really missing out on a very fertile ground for insight and understanding. And so I urge you not to just throw it away and say, oh, it's just so morbid, who wants to think about death? Well, right there is your attitude. That's your personal relationship. And be careful with that. Because death will come. Change will come. And the more insight we gain with this, the more insight and understanding we get through our exploration of the Dhamma, our exploration of impermanence, of loss, of attachment, then the more freedom we gain. The clinging drops away, and the distress, the dis-ease, discomfort, the continual sense that it just shouldn't be this way, or I wish it was other. We lose that. We let it go. And this takes some effort. It's not an easy aspect of the practice. So I wasn't planning on such a heavy talk, but that's what came out. And again, if you've found anything useful in what I've said, then please take that with you, reflect on it. And whatever you've found that hasn't been useful, then feel free to leave it behind. You will.